Okay, welcome back, friends. We are again going to start the current affair lectures that we have been taking for last 1 year. And in this whole exercise of taking these current affairs lecture, what we are trying to do is to cover the syllabus, because current affairs, as we all know, is not only about the recent events. It has a interlinking or a backlinking with all the static subjects that we study. So I hope you all are doing fine, and we'll be beginning our lecture again with the first topic that we have at our hand today is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has relaxed the norm for introduction of GMO plants. This is GMO, that means genetically modified organisms. Okay, so genetically modified plants ko Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has now allowed the introduction of a certain kind of GMO plants. Okay, we'll be looking into what kind of GMO has been allowed, and for the time being, this is our the topic at hand. So why this is in news? Because central government has exempted a certain kind of genome edited, मतलब genetically modified, ठीक है, genome edited crops from stringent GM regulations. So when we are studying about all this, कि how with the सबसे जो पहला क्वेश्चन होगा, the first question that we need to answer from UPSC perspective is कि what is GMO plant, what is genetically modified plant, and what is gene editing. Very basic introduction to that. The second thing that we'll be looking towards, what now we'll have to look at this point, regulations. Regulation, that means there is certain kind of regulatory framework that governs the introduction or like the use of genetically modified plants or organisms in India. So we'll be looking at the structure of regulatory bodies that we have in our India to monitor or the introduction, monitor the usage and all kind of these related to genetically modified organisms or plants. The first question that arises is ki why do we need at the first hand a regulatory body for the regulation or introduction of GM crops? Why does the government has a legitimate concern, or why is government interested in regulating? Why is government interested in regulating the introduction of a certain kind of GM crop? Why is it interested at the first hand? So we all know that genetic engineering has brought a lot of immense opportunities in the field of like editing our genes, genome, gene sequences, and producing a new kind of organism that might not be naturally produced. Okay? So, but there are many questions that we have in our mind while introducing such crops or such organisms in the real world, because these organisms once introduced will alter the biology, will alter the ecology into the system where they are introduced. Okay, that is why introduction of such kind of genetically modified organisms or plants is, the monitoring is very important. And why? Because once they enter into the ecosystem, they are not the natural species, they are having some modified characters, so they might not have the natural predators or the natural control system in the environment. So this might alter the ecology of the system. To maintain that, every government throughout the world, they regulate the introduction and usage of GM crops. ठीक है? तो इंडिया में the very first important point that we need to know is कि which ministry is responsible for what, the introduction or regulation of GM crops. तो सबसे important है MoEFCC, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. MoEFCC is the nodal ministry which regulates the introduction of GM crops into India. ठीक है? अब MoEFCC में एक important body है Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. It's a committee within this ministry. Okay, MoEFCC के अंडर में GEAC, Genetic Engineering Approval Committee. This committee approves or disapproves any kind of introduction of GM crops within India. Okay, any kind of biotechnological application that is being developed that is related to GM crops will have to go through this Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Okay, so back. Now genome editing, what we are looking here, it is genome editing. Genome editing is different from genetically modified organisms. ठीक है? तो the difference is not very evident. Okay, for the like the people who are not from biology or all these branches, the difference is not very evident, but there is a certain kind of difference, and most of the countries have classified them into different classification, different classes. Like one is genetically engineered crop, sorry, and the other is genetically modified. Matlab, first one is gene editing and the other is modification. Now, what is the basic difference between editing and modification? We'll be looking at all this. It's very important point that we need to understand here is there's a difference between genetically modified organisms and CRISPR based gene editing. CRISPR is a specific kind of tool that we use to edit. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे क्या है, we see this is the original DNA sequence or gene sequence as we can say. What we are doing here is we are clipping out, we are clipping out one whole section of the gene and we are introducing a foreign gene. ठीक है, for example in BT cotton, ठीक है, तो the most popular example is BT cotton. Okay, BT cotton. BT cotton is a special kind of variety of cotton that is being produced in India right now. It is being used, yes, it is being produced in India, and it is the only GMO crop, genetically modified organism, GMO crop that has passed the approval of GEAC for introduction in India. Okay. Now, what is BT cotton and why are we calling it genetically modified? So it is very simple that BT represents Bacillus, BAS, Bacillus thuringiensis. Bacillus thuringiensis is actually a bacteria. It's a soil residing bacteria. ठीक है, तो this bacteria has a specific property that it emits a specific toxin related to killing the pink bollworms. Pink bollworm is a very crucial problem with the cotton plant. ठीक है, what happens is when the flower comes, a specific kind of insect bites the flower and the flower is destroyed. That means the cotton is not of any use. To fight that pink bollworm, what scientists did was they extracted a certain kind of DNA sequence from BT. BT is what? Bacillus thuringiensis. And जब इसके DNA से specific sequence extract करके plant के DNA में लगा दिया, तो this becomes a genetically modified organism या genetically modified cotton plant. So that is why now what you have done is actually you have modified the genetic content of the plant. Okay, that means if we take the original DNA, ठीक है, a very rough drawing, if that was the original DNA of the cotton plant, now if we introduce this into, basically what we are doing is we are removing some part of this original DNA and we are adding a foreign genetic element. This will lead to transformation of the genetic content itself. That means this DNA and this DNA are not the same anymore, right? Even though this DNA will also produce a cotton plant, but that kind of cotton plant will be having a specific property that will be derived from the genetic content that has been taken from Bacillus thuringiensis. ठीक है, और इस बैक्टीरिया की स्पेसिफिक प्रॉपर्टी क्या है कि it emits a specific toxin which kills the pink bollworm. ठीक है, तो ये this is a soil residing bacteria. तो what scientists did was कि इस BT जो भी बैक्टीरिया है इसके जेनेटिक कंटेंट से वो वाला पार्ट निकाल लिया जिसकी वजह से वो स्पेसिफिक टॉक्सिन जनरेट होता है एंड दे एडेड दिस इनटू द कॉटन्स डीएनए. अब ये जो नया डीएनए बनेगा दैट विल बी मॉडिफाइड, कंप्लीटली मॉडिफाइड. दैट मीन्स जेनेटिकली दिस एंड दिस कॉटन, ऑल्दो दे विल बोथ बी प्रोड्यूसिंग कॉटन, बट जेनेटिक कॉम्पोजिशन ऑफ बोथ ऑफ देम इज नॉट द सेम. they are very clearly distinguishable. That means they are different genetically. Okay, although both will produce cotton of the very same quality, but this plant will be able to fight the pink bollworm problem, right? तो ये तो हो गया GMO, genetically modified. Now we need to understand what is gene editing, right? Now this, now there's a lot of noise about CRISPR, right? What is CRISPR? Cas9. Cas9 is a protein, okay, and CRISPR is basically a tool to edit, to truncate or to cut a specific part of DNA. ठीक है, DNA या genetic material. So what we do is, what we in this method, what we did was we introduced a foreign genetic material into the original DNA of the plant. But here what we are doing is, we are not introducing any foreign genetic material, but what we are doing is we are editing it. Okay, like A, B, C, D, A, B. For example, we take a sequence. Okay, we take a sequence. What we do is we edit, we remove basically some of it. A, B, A, B. Okay. So what happened was, CD has been removed, AB, AB. That means a specific portion of this has been edited out. Okay, but no foreign genetic material, right? The foreign genetic material has not been introduced. That means this and this are genetically same because no foreign genetic material has been introduced into it. अब ये यहाँ पे deletion हो रहा है. It could have also been insertion, like A, B, C, D, A, B. Now this sequence and this sequence are different. Why? Because an A has been inserted after D. So the very same thing is going to happen in this CRISPR gene editing. अब gene editing दो method से होती है. We are not the students of biology. We don't have to study medicine. So what we basically need to understand कि दो प्रकार से होती है gene editing. Basically there are three kind of SN12. ठीक है, ओके, ठीक है. There are, what we are going to study, there are three kind of genetic editing: SDN1, SDN2 and SDN3. But we are not interested in knowing all these things in detail. What we need to understand here is what is gene editing and how it is different from genetically modified organisms. So the basic difference and the most crucial one was gene editing is editing the portion of genetic content or genetic material without the introduction of any foreign genetic material. That means the original gene and the new gene that has been produced after the editing of the original gene, both are genetically the same. Okay? The patterns may be different, but they are genetically same. But in GMO, genetically modified organisms, what happens is कि a foreign genetic content has been introduced, due to which both the original and the new plant are not genetically same. ठीक है? So there is a very peculiar difference between GMO and gene editing. Now these UPSC is asking all these questions, मतलब they can ask anything, we know. तो that is why it is very important to understand. बस इतना ही understanding जरूरी है, इससे ज़्यादा नहीं. Now we'll be moving on to the regulatory part. ठीक है, तो सबसे important जो न्यूज़ तो इतना ही है कि the SDN1 and SDN2 genome edited plants have been now allowed to be used in India. ठीक है, and उसके लिए the government will not be relying upon the GEAC. What I told in the very beginning, the government will not be relying upon GEAC. GEAC means Genetic Engineering Approval Committee. मतलब usually for introduction of any kind of genetic material GMO plant in India, the company will have to apply for approval at where? MoEFCC, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. मतलब जैसे एक कंपनी है Monsanto, ठीक है? Monsanto is a US based company which produces genetically modified plants. It produces BT cotton, ठीक है? BT cotton and also BT brinjal, ठीक है? और बहुत सारे ऐसे hybrid varieties भी produce करती है Monsanto. It is one of the, like in agriculture sector, it is one of the biggest company in the whole wide world. So what Monsanto, if Monsanto wants to introduce certain kind of genetically modified plants into India, if it wants that its genetically modified plants be sold in India, so what it will have to do is it will have to apply to MoEFCC for approval. ठीक है, कि हमारे पास ये GMO for GMO, ठीक है? Now MoEFCC के अंदर एक जेनेटिक इंजीनियरिंग अप्रेजल कमेटी है जो कि इस जो भी जीएमओ प्लांट आप इंट्रोड्यूस करना चाह रहे हैं उसके फील्ड ट्रायल्स एंड ऑल द लैब एक्सपेरिमेंट्स और तमाम प्रकार के एक्सपेरिमेंट्स करेंगे दे विल डू, एंड दे विल स्टडी द इफेक्ट ऑफ दिस GMO plant, GMO crop on the local ecology, and if they deem fit, then only they will approve that GMO for introduction in India. अभी तक only BT cotton has been approved. Okay, अभी तक only BT cotton has been approved. Now why I'm telling this, because we need to understand सबसे important while studying for UPSC exams, what most important thing is to understand the regulatory or the kind of governance framework that is present in India. Okay, because at the end of the day, if you are going to become an IAS or any kind of in administrative services, you need to understand how things function in India, and that is why polity becomes one of the most important subject, polity and governance. Sorry. So now we'll be taking a detour to understand the regulation and governance of GMO crops in India. ठीक है, तो सबसे important first the act, ठीक है, EPA 1986, Environment Protection Act 1986. Environment Protection Act 1986 is, ठीक है, this is Environment Protection Act 1986. So for regulation of GMO crops in India, the foundational act or foundational law is EPA 1986, Environmental Protection Act 1986. अब इसके अंदर this act empowers central government, ठीक है, central government, this empowers central government to allow दो चीजें हैं. The first one this act empowers is to allow for introduction of GMO crops. Okay, GMO को हम GMO अब नहीं कहेंगे, we will actually say it living modified organisms. ठीक है, we'll say it LMO. तो LMO क्यों कह रहे हैं? Because any kind of plant or animal or any kind of insect, it can be anything, ठीक है, anything that has the genetic content modified, that is called LMO. अब living modified organisms पे एक बहुत important protocol है, that is called Cartagena protocol. Cartagena protocol, ठीक है. This protocol is actually a subsidiary to what? The International Convention on Biodiversity. It is a subsidiary to Convention on Biodiversity. ठीक है. Convention on Biodiversity was signed in 2000. Okay, sorry. This was actually signed in 1992 Rio de Janeiro. ठीक है, 1992 Earth Conference. तो I hope you understood कि इंडिया में regulatory body, regulatory act है EPA 1986, which authorizes only central government. That means state governments cannot allow or disallow the introduction of or the usage of living modified organisms. The second part of this act is it empowers, okay, it empowers the central government again to make laws and regulations for monitoring and handling of hazardous substances or living modified organisms. Okay, तो hazardous substances के और living modified organisms के handling और regulation के लिए भी law बनाने की power EPA 1986 देता है किसको? Central government को. I hope you understood the whole governance structure in India. ठीक है. अब दूसरा important क्या था? LMO living modified organisms के ऊपर कौन सी protocol है? Cartagena protocol, which is a subsidiary to Convention on Biodiversity. ठीक है. Now protocol is different from a convention. ठीक है. Convention is like a framework. Protocol is a certain kind of obligatory rules to follow. ठीक है. तो Cartagena protocol is a subsidiary to what? Convention on Biodiversity. ठीक है. Okay, I hope you understood this. ठीक है. Again, what do the recent regulations say? That the SDN1 and SDN2 genome, SDN1 is nothing but, this is called site specific molecular alteration of DNA. ठीक है. And this is sequence specific. मतलब ये जानना बहुत जरूरी नहीं है, लेकिन for the sake of, okay, where it has gone, ठीक है, for the sake of knowing, like this is DNA molecule. Okay, okay, if we alter specific DNA, specific site of that DNA, that is called site specific, SDN1. What if we are changing the whole sequence of this DNA, that will be called SDN2. ठीक है. But in both of these cases, no foreign genetic content is not introduced into the original DNA. ठीक है. लेकिन अगर हम सीक्वेंस वाइज इसको एडिट कर रहे हैं तो दैट विल बी कॉल्ड SDN2. बट अगर किसी एक स्पेसिफिक साइट पे एडिट कर रहे हैं इसको, DNA को, दैट विल बी कॉल्ड SDN1. तो what government has done is it has allowed SDN1 and SDN2 genome edited plants, it has not basically allowed, what we can say in like more correct language is that it has जो earlier laws थे, like passing through GEAC, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change को apply करो, and then they will pass through the GEAC and they will check all the studies on that specific GMO plant and all the field trials. अब उसकी बजाय the regulatory body will be Institutional Biosafety Committee. Okay, Institutional Biosafety Committee will be the regulatory body for the introduction. This will basically perform a study on that GMO plant instead of Genetic Engineering Approval Committee. That means the whole process of approval for SDN1 and SDN2 genome edited crops will now be simplified, and the bureaucratic red tapeism and the time frame that actually took for the introduction of one GMO crop was very long. Why? Because the GEAC performed a lot of field trials. It performed a lot of studies all over the world. Okay? And after that only any kind of approval was given. And that is why only one GM crop has been allowed till now, and that is BT cotton. ठीक है. तो SDN1 और SDN2 के बारे में there are because these SDN1 and SDN2 they do not have a genetic modification, so that means they can be allowed without that kind of regulatory control as the genetically modified plants have. Okay, तो इसलिए what government has done, government has relaxed the rules for introduction, manufacture or manufacture, import or storage of hazardous microorganisms or genetically engineered organisms under the Cell Rules of 1989. Now what we are doing here is Cell Rules 1989. These are the rules provided after the introduction of EPA 1986. अगर एक बार एक्ट इंट्रोड्यूस होता है कोई, ठीक है, like EPA 1986, so this provides environment, this is called Environmental Protection Act 1986. It is an act. Okay, under this it has empowered central government to issue some rules. ठीक है, तो अब उन्हीं रूल्स, उसी पावर का यूज करके गवर्नमेंट ने सेल रूल्स 1989 पब्लिश किए हैं, और ये सेल रूल्स ही हैं जो गवर्न करते हैं मैन्युफैक्चर, यूज और इंपोर्ट ऑफ GM कंटेंट. ओके, आई होप यू अंडरस्टूड दैट. फाइन. This is not important, but you can see how a genetic like HIND3 is a specific enzyme that is used to cleave these bonds. Cleave means तोड़ना. ठीक है, तो एक स्पेसिफिक DNA है, उसका एक स्पेसिफिक सीक्वेंस को ही हमने ब्रेक कर दिया, and we will be providing some template here. Okay, and that again repairing of the DNA takes place and a new DNA is formed. Okay, so this is not very important. I added this to for the sake of explanation, but I hope I have explained it already in detail. This one is very important, I believe, because this is the page where we will understand कि which ministry is responsible for what kind of thing, okay, regarding the GMO crops. ठीक है, और ये बहुत जरूरी है because these kind of questions are favorite for UPSC. They are always concerned about what kind of ministry is having what kind of responsibility. In my earlier lectures also, for finance ministry of finance, I have already provided a whole list ki which department is related for production of like budget, which department is responsible for production of economic survey, and these are very important facts which have already been asked in UPSC. तो वैसे ही मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस की तरह ही मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरमेंट फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट मिनिस्ट्री, ओके, यू मस्ट ऑल नो इट. तो MoEFCC के अंडर में प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, एज आई सेड इन द वेरी बिगिनिंग, इट इज द नोडल मिनिस्ट्री फॉर एनी काइंड ऑफ introduction of why, because at the end of the day LMOs या GMOs, लिविंग मॉडिफाइड ऑर्गेनिजम्स या जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड ऑर्गेनिजम्स, इनका इम्पैक्ट इकोलॉजी पे पड़ेगा, राइट? इसीलिए इसको प्राइमरी नोडल एजेंसी बनाया गया है, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरमेंट फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज को, टू लाइक रेगुलेट द होल इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ GMO क्रॉप्स इन इंडिया. ठीक है, एंड दिस इज ऑल्सो अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट हियर गाइस, कि this is also the nodal agency for the implementation of Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. As we recently saw कि Cartagena Protocol is on living modified organisms. Cartagena Protocol is on living modified organisms. ठीक है, तो उसको भी कौन, Cartagena Protocol को इंडिया में कौन इंप्लीमेंट करता है? MoEFCC. फिर DBT, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी. ठीक है, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी के अंडर में सारा बायोटेक रिसर्च जो इंडिया में चल रहा है अंडर मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ साइंस. ठीक है, DBT इज अंडर मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी. तो जितना भी बायोटेक्नोलॉजिकल रिसर्च इंडिया में चल रहा है उसको रेगुलेट करता है DBT, विच इज अंडर द मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी. ठीक है, प्रोमोटिंग बायोटेक्नोलॉजी प्रोग्राम्स, साइंटिफिक सपोर्ट एंड बेसिकली रिसर्च. ठीक है, अब मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर. ठीक है, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ MoEFCC हैज द राइट ऑफ प्रोवाइडिंग अप्रूवल फॉर इंट्रोडक्शन. ठीक है, what is Ministry of Agriculture doing? It is of course ICAR, Indian Council of Agriculture Research. This is the institution which will perform studies on the effect of that specific LMO or GMO on the kind of agricultural the kind of agriculture we are doing. उसके ऊपर LMO या GMO का क्या impact है, उसके लिए important है Ministry of Agriculture. ICAR conducts all the research or the scientific research that Ministry of Agriculture needs is done through ICAR. ठीक है, it is also like post release performance. तो MoEFCC तो pre introduction and Ministry of Agriculture post release. ठीक है, and Ministry of Health. ठीक है, तो Ministry of Health अब release हो गया. पहले आपने क्या किया, आप पहले इंट्रोड्यूस करते हो उसको, बायोटेक्नोलॉजिकल रिसर्च होती है, उससे प्रोड्यूस होता है कोई बायोटेक्नोलॉजिकल प्रोडक्ट लाइक बीटी कॉटन, वो बायोटेक्नोलॉजिकल रिसर्च से प्रोड्यूस हुआ. फिर उनके वो गए मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट के पास, उन्होंने कहा कि हमारा प्रोडक्ट इंट्रोड्यूस करो. तो MoEFCC ने उसकी फील्ड ट्रायल्स किए और दे फाउंड कि ये ठीक है, इसको इंट्रोड्यूस किया जा सकता है. उन्होंने अलाउ कर दिया इंट्रोड्यूस करने को. नाउ बीटी कॉटन इज बीइंग यूज्ड ऑल ओवर इंडिया. फिर वो कहाँ गए, अब मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर रिस्पॉन्सिबल है एग्रीकल्चर के लिए इंडिया में. व्हाट दे विल डू इज दे विल परफॉर्म अ पोस्ट इंट्रोडक्शन स्टडी ऑन द यूज ऑफ बीटी कॉटन, कि बीटी कॉटन की वजह से सॉइल की टॉक्सिसिटी तो नहीं बढ़ रही, या बीटी कॉटन की वजह से जो इंसेक्ट इकोसिस्टम है उस पर क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है. ठीक है, इज बीटी कॉटन हार्मिंग अदर इंसेक्ट्स एज वेल. ठीक है, बिकॉज एक प्लांट पे बहुत सारे इंसेक्ट्स डिपेंड करते हैं. ठीक है, उसके बाद आता है मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ हेल्थ. नाउ दैट विल बी कंज्यूम, फॉर एग्जांपल बीटी ब्रिंजल. बीटी ब्रिंजल इज अ ब्रिंजल. ठीक है, तो बीटी ब्रिंजल अगर इंट्रोड्यूस हो गया तो दैट विल बी कंज्यूम्ड बाय अस ह्यूमंस, एंड नाउ मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ हेल्थ इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर द मॉनिटरिंग ऑफ इफेक्ट ऑफ दैट स्पेसिफिक क्रॉप ऑन ह्यूमंस. ठीक है, एंड ensuring that it is not being harmful for our health. तो उसके लिए कौन सा है, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ हेल्थ एंड फैमिली वेलफेयर. आई होप दिस वाज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट ऑफ ऑल द होल स्टडी दैट वी परफॉर्म राइट नाउ ऑन GMO क्रॉप्स. So this is very important कि which ministry is responsible for what. Okay, I hope you understood this.